The Assembly is now in session. Assembly Member Lopez notices the absence of a quorum. The Sergeants-at-Arms will prepare the chamber and bring in the absent members. The clerk will call the roll.
Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Baker, Bigelow, Bloom, Bonilla, Bonta, Bro, Brown, Burke, Calderon, Campos, Chang, Chow, Chavez, David Chu, Kansan Chu, Cooley, Cooper, DeBobne, Daly, Daly, Dodd, Eggman, Frazier, Gaines, Gallagher, Cristina Garcia, Eduardo Garcia, Gatto, Gibson, Gomez, Gonzalez, Gordon, Gray, Grove, Hadley, Harper, Hernandez, Holden, Irwin, Jones, Jones-Sawyer, Kim, Lackey, Levine, Linder, Lopez, Lowe, Mainshine, Mathis, Mays, McCarty, Medina, Melendez, Mullen, Nazarian, Obernolte, O'Donnell, Olson, Patterson, Perea, Quirk, Rendon, Ridley Thomas, Rodriguez, Salas, Santiago, Steinorth, Stone, Thurmond, Ting, Wagner, Waldron, Weber, Wilk, Williams, Wood. Madam Speaker.
Good morning. I'd like to ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. Today's prayer will be offered by our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papademos.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, everyone wants to get ahead in life, to gain an advantage, and to live better. But you have told us that those things are not the most important things. First, we should change inside, become the person that you want us to be. When we are filled with love toward you and others, our disposition changes. Help us, Lord, to turn away from selfishness, ego, and pride, and instead fill us with kindness and compassion. Amen.
I'd like to ask our guests and visitors to please remain standing for our flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Cooper as he leads us in the pledge.
Please join me in honoring our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Thursday, March 26, 2015. The Assembly met at 9 a.m. Honorable Kevin Mullen, Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly, presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dr.
Mr. Holden
Wilson
moves and Ms. Olson seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petition, there are none. Introduction and references of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Moving to motions and resolutions. Absences. Today for legislative business, Assemblymember O'Donnell. Why don't we now move to motions and resolutions? Mr. Holden, are you ready?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 and allow Assembly members Breaux, Chow, Gray, Jones-Sawyer, and McCarty to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Mr. Breaux and Mr. Chow will have guests at their desk for their introduction. I also request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 and allow Assembly members Gordon, Jones, Mullen, and Wood to speak on adjourned in memory today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Pursuant to Assembly Rule 96, I request unanimous consent to re-refer the following bills to committee. AB 57 Quirk from Utilities and Commerce Committee to the Rules Committee. Assembly Bill 474 Brown from the Aging and Long-Term Care Committee to the Rules Committee. Assembly Bill 525 Holden from the Business and Professions Committee to the Rules Committee. Assembly Bill 577 Bonilla from the Utilities and Commerce Committee to the Rules Committee. Assembly Bill 802 Williams from the Natural Resources Committee to the Rules Committee. Assembly Bill 884 Rendon from the Arts and Entertainment, Sports and Tourism and Internet Media Committee to the Rules Committee. Assembly Bill 1087 Grove from the Natural Resources Committee to the Transportation. Strike that. Assembly Bill 1189 Bigelow from the Arts and Entertainment, Sports, Tourism and Internet Media Committee to the Rules Committee. Assembly Bill 1192 Quirk from the Natural Resources Committee to the Rules Committee, and Assembly Bill 1461, Gonzalez, from the Elections and Redistricting Committee to the Rules Committee.
Ms. Waldron.
Objection. Without objection.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Pursuant to Assembly Rules 96, I request unanimous consent to re-refer the following bills to committee. Assembly Bill 102, Rodriguez, from Transportation Committee to the Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee. Assembly Bill 796, Nazarian, from the Health Committee to the Business and Professions Committee, then back to the Health Committee. Assembly Bill 838, Bro, from the Human Services Committee to the Health Committee. Assembly Bill 1189 Bigelow from the Arts and Entertainment, Sports and Tourism and Internet Media Committee to, strike that. Assembly Bill 1294 Holden from the Health Committee to the Accountability and Administrative Review Committee. And those would be the referrals.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Ms. Waldron.
We would object to that. We would like a roll call vote as we think these bills should go to Rules Committee.
Ms. Waldron has asked for a roll call vote. Mr. Holden? Do you have any?
Fine.
Okay. At this time, Ms. Waldron has asked for a roll call vote on this procedural motion. It takes 41 votes to re-refer. Ms. Waldron is asking for an aye vote. Mr. Holden is asking... I'm sorry.
She did a different motion. It's now Mr. Holden, since she's asking for roll call vote.
Okay.
Mr. Holdren.
Apologies.
Holden is asking for an aye vote.
Ms. Waldron has asked for a roll call vote. Mr. Holden is asking for an aye vote. Ms. Waldron is asking for a no vote. The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 46, noes 24. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Mr. Holden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to rescind the April 7, 2015 action whereby Assembly Bill 869, Cooper, was reported from the Transportation Committee due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Appropriations.
Without objection, that request is granted.
And at the request of Ms. Waldron, please remove file item 52, AB 60, Gonzalez, from the consent calendar.
And without objection, the clerk will note.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
At this time, let's move to guest introductions. Mr. Bro, you're recognized for your guest introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I've got the honor today to have my immediate family with me in the Capitol. Some of you have met them, but others have not. They're the people that are the most important to me. So I'd like to introduce my wife, Michelle, our daughter Kaylin, my father-in-law Ron Jackson, and my son Connor is here at my desk with me.
Thank you, Mr. Bro. Let's move to our next guest introduction, Mr. Ed Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'd like to introduce my family, my wife, Candace, and my daughter, Caitlin, who is on her spring break. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, we will come back to our guest introductions. Why don't we now go to our business on the daily file? To the second reading, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 610, 312, 389 with amendments, 258, 856 with amendments, 822, 1511, 1512, 1513, 673, 892, 160 with amendments, 539, 696, 730, 1134, 294 with amendments, 913 with amendments, and 899 with amendments.
Why don't we now go to concurrence in Senate amendments to file item 20, ACR 13. Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, are you ready? The clerk will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 13 by Assemblymember Williams and others relative to a day of remembrance.
Mr. Williams, you may open on the measure.
Mr. Speaker, members, this is the Day of Remembrance resolution that we have already debated and presented on the floor. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Williams has asked for an aye vote. Mr. Williams, do you want the first roll to be open for co-author? Concurrence. Okay. The clerk will open the roll.
Marie, can you hit me yes? Thank you.
Okay, the clerk will close the roll. Ayes 73, nays 0. The Senate amendments are concurred. Let's go at this time to the Assembly third reading to file item 21, ACR 24, with Mr. Kansen-Chu. The clerk will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 24 by Assemblymember Kansen-Chu relative to Child Abuse Prevention Month.
Mr. Chu.
Speakers and members, I rise to present Assembly Concurrent Resolution 24, recognizing April 2015 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Child abuse and neglect remain an epidemic that the state cannot ignore. According to the University of California, Berkeley's Center for Social Services Research, approximately 84,000 children in California were found to be victims of abuse. The effects are devastating. Many victims suffer from an array of health and behavioral issues such as depression, alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide, and other chronic diseases. This is necessary measure that we increase awareness and encourage community to work together to combat the emotional and physical damage that occurs as a result of the abuse. So I ask for opening the first row for co-authoring.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. Ms. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our colleague for this resolution and proud to rise in support of it. There are many ways that we can all work together in our communities to prevent child abuse. One is the promotion of this measure, which increases awareness. Another is supporting those organizations in our districts and throughout the state that are dedicated to combating and fighting violence in families and abuse of children. I'd like to offer another one that I think is very consistent with this measure, and that is in every youth organization that we're involved. Make sure that they have a culture of training those who come into contact with children on how to report problems before they become more serious, understanding what their reporting requirements are, and training them on best practices for the prevention of violence and harm to children. These are all great ways that this month, as we are aware of child abuse prevention needs, that we can work together. So not just in our great organizations throughout the state that are dedicated to stopping violence and abuse of children, but in every other organization that we can be involved in that children are participating in as well. So please be sure to amplify this message that we have today, to not just vote on this resolution. Let's go back to our districts and work with youth organizations to prevent abuse of children. Thank you. And I urge an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Chu, you may close.
Thank you very much. I ask for your aye vote.
Colleagues, I understand Mr. Chu has asked for the first roll to be open for co-authors. The clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors. The clerk will close the roll. 75 co-authors are added. Without objection, we'll take a voice vote on this measure. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Going to file item 22, ACR 18, we will pass and retain. Item 23, ACR 29, will pass and retain. Item 24, ACR 15, we will pass and retain. Item 25, AB 847, Mr. Dubovne. Mr. Dubovne. Actually, let me just ask the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 147 by Assemblymember Dubovne and others, an act relating to post-secondary education.
Mr. Dubovne, you may open.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. AB 147 is a straightforward bipartisan measure that is reasonable and humane to allow research animals to be retired once they've been concluded in the process for tax-funded payer research, by allowing them to be placed up for adoption at the conclusion of this research. Although many federal, state, and academic institutional policies exist and cover detailed aspects of the dog and cat's life during the research process, there exists no guidelines on what to do with these animals once the research has been concluded. Several schools, including UC Berkeley and UC Davis, have adopted post-research adoption policies, and I applaud them for these efforts, but these programs are voluntary and discretionary. AB 147 would standardize these practices across the state for taxpayer-funded research universities. And it is only in the event that such on-campus adoption programs are unable to find a home for a research animal that an outside rescue organization must be contacted under the bill. I also would like to say that this measure is one of last resort. This will simply put it, by one of the young members of the audience who spoke the day it was in the Higher Education Committee, allow more of these animals become someone's pet. The issue of liability has been raised, and I can assure you that we have taken amendments to prevent these research universities from facing liability. Simply put, AB 147 is a bipartisan measure. It's common sense, and it allows more of these research animals at the conclusion of their research to be able to become someone's pet. It passed the Higher Education Committee in a bipartisan vote with only a single no vote. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Waldron, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise as a proud principal co-author of AB 147, which is legislation that enjoys wide bipartisan support. My district and the state at large has many wonderful rescue organizations that stand ready to help these animals in need and help reward these cats and dogs with a brand new life. A few weeks ago, I got a chance to meet a couple of these freed research beagles, and they are happy and healthy little dogs, no different from the ones many of us share our homes with. Passing AB 147 today will affirm that California is still a leader in establishing the highest standards for animal welfare. I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of AB 147 as a proud owner of an adopted rescue beagle. Pleased to support 147 and be a co-author, and I thank the Assembly member from San Fernando Valley for carrying the bill. This bill creates an opportunity for adoption to post-research dogs and cats who deserve every chance at life after their time in the laboratory. This legislation simply establishes a baseline minimum standard of care and opportunity that every healthy dog and cat deserves from our taxpayer-financed labs. AB 147 is a compassionate, common-sense policy measure. No matter your views on the issue of animal testing, we can unify in support for these animals who need and deserve our help. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. DeBobne, you may close.
I just want to thank my co-authors. I love that we can have a bipartisan bill in this way to make sure that we keep accountable those that take taxpayer funding for research. Once again, this does not interfere with the research process. This simply says at the conclusion of the research, these animals be given a chance to become someone's pet. I think that's a very reasonable measure for a humane state. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. DeBobne has asked for an aye vote. The clerk will open the roll. All those who vote who desire to vote. All those who vote who desire to vote. All those who vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. The ayes 75, noes 1. The measure passes. Going now to file item 26, AB 296 by Assemblymember Dodd. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 296 by Assemblymember Dodd and others, enact relating to weights and measures.
Assemblymember Dodd, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 296 would extend the statutory sunset date on the ability of local governments to recover costs associated with the administration of an annual device registration program, which helps to ensure the accuracy of all commercially used weighing and measuring devices in the state. AB 296 would extend the sunset date from 2016 to 2019 and freeze fees caps at their current level. County sealers of weights and measures are tasked with identifying and testing any scale, meter, pump, or other weighing and measuring device that is used by the state to determine the price of an item or commodity offered for sale. Without the authority to collect these fees, inspections by county sealers would be significantly curtailed, compromising consumer protection and market competition. All local consumer protection inspection activity is funded entirely by registration fees and does not affect the state general fund. This bill has bipartisan support. This is not a new fee, and there is no opposition to this bill. Support for AB 296 will ensure that you get what you pay for. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Dodd, you may close.
Respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you
okay,
very
this
much.
time Mr. Dodd has asked for an aye vote. The clerk will open the roll. All those who vote who desire to vote. All those who vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. The ayes 74, nays 0. The measure passes. If we can now go to file item 27, AB 158 by Assemblymember O'Donnell. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 158 by Assemblymember O'Donnell and others, enact relating to school finance.
Without objection, Assemblymember McCarty will take up file item 27 on behalf of Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, on behalf of Mr. O'Donnell, I'm proud to present to you AB 158, which names the statutory provisions that implement Prop 98 in the Ed Code as the John B. Mockler School Finance Act. As you remember, last month we adjourned in Mr. Mockler's memory, who died at the age of 73 from pancreatic cancer. He was a towering figure in the world of California education policy and finance for more than 4 decades. He served California in a number of capacities, including as a staff to then the Ways and Means Committee, served as the California Secretary of Education, and was the Executive Director of the State Board of Ed. He was the principal author of Prop 98, the constitutional minimum school funding guarantee, but his legacy is so much more than that. He made his mark helping establish the landmark Cal Grant Entitlement Program, which provides higher education access for thousands of Californians every year. Mr. Mockler's legacy as a California education policy expert is one that lives on through this measure, AB 158. So on behalf of Assemblymember O'Donnell and our Madam Speaker, I respectfully request your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. McCarty has asked for an aye vote. The clerk will open the roll. All those who vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. The ayes 76, nays 0. The measure passes. Let's move now to file item 28, AB 346 by Assemblymember Jones. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 436 by Assemblymember Jones, an act relating to protective proceedings.
Mr. Jones, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 436 will clarify that attorneys appointed by the court to represent conservatees in dementia powers cases are to be discharged by the court or ordered to continue representation upon the granting or denial of these powers. These powers can be granted only after investigation and court hearing, which the conservatee is represented by counsel. This bill passed judiciary on consent. I ask for your aye vote this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Jones has asked for an aye vote. The clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. The ayes 77, nays 0. The measure passes. At this time, if we could go to file item 29, ACR 32, by Assemblymember Bloom. The clerk will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 32 by Assemblymember Bloom, relative to California Craft Beverage Month.
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to present ACR 32, which, lest it slip by unnoticed, declares the month of April 2015 as California Craft Beverage Month. California is home to 520 small independently owned craft breweries, 425 independently owned wineries, and about 50 artisanal distillers. Beer, wine, and distilled spirits tourism is increasingly popular and contributes to the economic impact of California's tourism industry. In 2014, the California craft brewers industry alone had a $5.5 billion economic impact on the state, while the Craft Wine Association contributed substantially to the already strong $60+ billion California wine industry. That's a big industry. California craft industry is a leader in the stewardship of natural resources and the environment. The industry has made a major commitment to implement sustainable practices that are environmentally sound, including some of the largest solar arrays in the private sector, and the use of fuel cells and other innovative conservation techniques and processes. The members of the craft industry have a strong commitment to promoting the responsible consumption of alcohol, as well as fighting underage drinking and driving. This is accomplished through responsible advertising, strict codes of conduct, and other initiatives that educate the public on common sense guidelines for drinking. Despite the challenges of intense global competition, the state's craft beverages industry is strong and growing, I'm happy to say, and it's a major contributor to the economic vitality of California. The mission and goals of the craft industry are to protect and promote the art and craft of small batch beverages while enhancing consumer awareness. Thank you. I ask for your...
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As chair of the Select Committee on Craft Brewing and Distilling, I rise in support of ACR 32 and thank the author for bringing this forward. This resolution highlights California's rich history as the birthplace of craft beverages. In 1982, Governor Jerry Brown signed AB 3610 to remove the restriction on on-premises sales of craft beer. Since then, the craft brewing industry has grown to a $5.5 billion industry of more than 500 California breweries. In Sonoma County, home of California's first microbrewer, small brewers and distillers are now a major part of our local economy. As an example, every year Russian River Brewing in Santa Rosa releases Pliny the Younger. The release of this beer is of international significance and has become an annual event. So much so that the Sonoma County Economic Development Board published a report that highlighted the economic impact of the 2013 release. The report stated that the release drew more than 12,500 patrons to Santa Rosa. At least 26 states and 5 foreign countries were represented. The total tourism-related economic impact of the release was nearly $2.4 million. Additionally, the number of craft distilleries across the United States has increased fivefold in recent years. Many local distillers employ a grain-to-glass philosophy. This means each stage of the production is entirely in-house. This dedication to quality reflects the artisanal spirit of this growing industry. Members, these companies create local jobs. They are artists who put a great deal of effort into making a product that is identified with their community and distinguishes themselves in the marketplace. These are burgeoning industries of small, locally owned businesses, and I encourage an aye vote on this resolution.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I also rise in support of ACR 32. In 1989, the County of San Diego had just one microbrewery, and today nearly 100. And San Diego County has become a destination worldwide for microbreweries. And now with the developing market of microdistilleries as well, I believe that this is a great ACR recognizing the importance of this industry in California. Support the author, and I say cheers.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Bloom, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that the first roll be open for co-authors and members. I know that this is a tough vote for you, but I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Bloom has asked the first roll to be open for co-authors for this tough vote. The clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors. Members, this is for co-authors. The clerk will close the roll.